Hey, how you doing, man? Where are you at right now? Where am I catching you?
So I'm in New York,
Oh,
in
okay.
Williamsburg.
Nice, man. Are you living out there?
Yeah, so I moved out here start of the year, and my partner, she had to move here for work. And then I was like, oh, I'm pretty happy because before COVID, I lived in LA for like 8 years or something.
Right.
Then COVID happened, and then I was like, shit, what do I do? And then I was like, I'll just go back to Australia. And I'm from a farm, so it was super chill, COVID. We just went back to the farm. It's right on the beach, just surfed every day.
You went
hung
all the way
out.
back home, yeah.
Yeah. So it was really good. So we had a very relaxing time during COVID. Like we were just on in our own little world. But then when we moved back, she's like, hey, I have to move to New York. So then I was like, yeah, okay, cool. I've never lived in New York. So then I came and I was super lucky to find this studio space in Williamsburg. I randomly Googled studios in Williamsburg, and then this Polish dude was like, yeah, I've got like 4 rooms underneath my restaurant.
Oh, wow.
That are studios. Like there's my vocal booth there.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's, I can be as loud as I want, can crank it and have no noise issues. The only issue is that there's stairs behind there. So you hear people walking down a little bit.
Right.
And then one door slams. But
for Brooklyn, man, that's not bad. I have some friends with some real sketchy Brooklyn studio situations,
Yeah, man. So, and this one's super big and has lots of storage space and stuff. So I was really lucky.
So how long have you been in New York now?
Since January.
Okay. Since January.
Yeah, it's cold, man. So cold. Like I've never had to live anywhere like in the snow or like just cold weather in general.
Right.
Like where I grew up in Australia, the coldest it would get is like 9 degrees in the middle of winter, which is Celsius.
Right. In Fahrenheit, I forget what that is, but that's not that cold.
Yeah. And that's like the coldest day of the year. Sort of thing. And then like that's like at 6 a.m. in the morning. Then during the day, it'll be like 13 and stuff, 14, 17. So it's really not that bad.
It's a whole different thing, man. Yeah.
Here, and I was like, damn, this is cold. And like, I live in Greenpoint and then my studio's in Williamsburg. It's like a 25-minute walk. And I would just walk every day because Ubers are it's like
crazy.
$25 for me to get to the studio. And it's like a 10-minute drive or a 20-minute walk.
Right.
So I'm always like, I'll just walk, and I always try and walk because I'm like sitting down so much of the day. I try and be as active as possible. But the summer, I love the summer here. It's like so hot and warm. So I'm good.
Yeah. I kind of I made the switch over time. I was born and raised in Minneapolis, which is very, very cold, like crazy, crazy cold. And that was always kind of my vibe growing up. And then as I got older, it's like, I just can't deal with that level of cold anymore. I just can't do it. But wait, what part of Australia were you in? Like, where was this small farm?
So it's in between Sydney and Melbourne, New South Wales, the state, right down the bottom, a place called Bega.
Okay.
It's like a big dairy farming community there. I grew up, my parents were dairy farmers. My grandfather was a dairy farmer.
Wow.
We've had the same farm for like so many generations. So there's like a lot of history there, which is really cool. And yeah, I was the first DJ.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, probably previous generations, that wasn't even really an option,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I grew up there and then, just grew up. It's like 20 minutes from the beach.
Okay.
Super green area.
How remote are we talking? Like, did it feel like there was like nobody else around?
Oh, like my school growing up, there was 8 people in my class, my year.
Okay.
Yeah. There was like 3 guys or something. And that was it.
Wow.
From like age 4 to 12.
Man. So, I mean, what is that like for you as a kid? Because, I mean, we don't know each other, but, I just from your music and like reading your interviews and seeing video and all that, I mean, you're like an open, friendly guy, social seeming guy, and coming up in a super rural area like that, I think can either people embrace it and you kind of make your own fun and that sort of thing, or there's a kind of person who would be like, oh, this is way too isolating. Like, I got to get out of here.
Yeah. Well, I guess growing up, like, I didn't know any different, like that's all the experience I had at that point in my life. So it was weird because like I didn't appreciate things the way you do, or I didn't understand things. I just enjoyed it. I had a great time. But I had no juxtaposition in being like living in a city and knowing what it's like living in a city and then living in the country and then experiencing both. So for me, it wasn't until I was like 19, 20 when I moved to Miami, I was like, damn, this is like an apartment. I was like, this is pretty small. And I was like, this is all that we got. Like, where's the trees? Where's the nature? Like,
right.
And that's one thing that I always kind of still struggle with is like, not being in so much nature and everything.
Man, yeah, that's a big small farm in Australia to Miami is about as big of a change as you can make.
Oh man, yeah, it was crazy, man. Yeah, literally, it was like going from Bega, population of like 4,000 people or something, but that's like the closest town.
Okay,
and that's like a 50-minute drive from our farm.
Wow.
But then the closest town to us is called Candelo.
Okay.
I think there's like 80 people or something there. Man. I could be wrong though.
If it's anywhere small in that neighborhood, that's wild.
It's tiny. Like you drive through it and then in 1 second you're already out of it kind of thing.
Wow. So did you, growing up, like, did you have a lot of other kids around? Were there like, what were you like as a kid, I guess is the question.
Well, I grew up always working around cattle and milking and everything and kind of working on the farm. Like my dad would teach me. My grandfather was really adamant about me like taking over the farm and everything.
So from like a young age then.
Yeah. Like he's like teaching me to fence and like muster cattle and
wow.
And everything. And then dad was a bit more relaxed on it. But still was teaching me. But he was very adamant about me doing what I loved and would always like show me, make me milk and everything so that I wouldn't want to do that as a career.
Right.
And then so like my parents were very encouraging to make sure that like I hated doing dairy farming and stuff like that. And so that I would go off and do my own thing and what I loved. So if, like from the age of like 8 or from the point growing up, like they were always like, what do you love? Like, what do you want to do and stuff? And then I was like, oh, I want to learn guitar. And so they'd be like, okay, like they'd like get me a guitar and then they'd be like, you want to do music? Okay. Let's help you do music. Cause especially in Australia, like from, the year like 2000 all the way up to 2015, of course there was like good seasons between then,
right?
But like massive drought and like it just destroyed so much of the farming community. Wow. Obviously with farms you go into debt because you have to get more feed and everything. So yeah, it was hectic, and it isn't been till recently, like since 2020, that Australia has seen like an insane amount of rain.
Wow.
Almost too much rain.
Right, it's the other side of the problem.
Yeah, but they've had like the best seasons ever. But so it was really tough growing up because being dependent on the rain as your income was like stressful because it's out of your control, and you're like gambling on everything,
Wow. Yeah. How much of that were you aware of, at the time as a kid? Like, could you see your parents kind of going through it?
Yeah, totally. You could see it, like you'd walk outside and it would just be dirt. Like there'd be nothing, like no grass, and then you'd be feeding all the cattle hay. And yeah, it'd be a real struggle. So yeah, it really taught me not to do that. And growing up, they were also like, hey, if you want to be a farmer, like go for it, But they just wanted to make sure that I was just happy and doing something that I loved.
I mean, that's amazing, man. That's pretty much all you could ask for. Was it just you and them? You have any siblings?
I got one older sister. She's 2 years older than me. And then, yeah, same thing. Like my parents were very encouraging to just get her to do what she loved and everything. And their aim as parents were to get us out of being farmers and so that we weren't dependent on the weather and milk prices and all that.
Right. Which is funny that you ended up doing music, which is a famously insecure line of work.
I know, especially with COVID, man. That's funny.
I mean, that was our drought, right? Like,
that's what I mean. I was like, damn, I never expected to, well, I guess no one did, but like the dairy farm during COVID didn't stop one day. Like it has to be milked, cows have to be milked twice a day, every day. And they could run all the way through COVID,
So, like you wanting to play guitar, like those early inklings of music, was music something you were always attracted to? Like what were you hearing that was kind of turning you onto it at the time? I
was always fascinated when I just started hearing music. I was like so curious about like how do they do that? I'm like, how does he like remember like from like 5 just being like how do they make all those sounds together all in one? And then like understanding that it's like a band or something or a producer and learning that. And I was always curious to be like, oh, like I want to try that. Or like I want to learn that. And I want to figure out how I can do that. And then it was like when I was 13, I remember there was it was like I think it was 2005, and that song by Milo, "Drop the Pressure."
Oh yeah, what a timeless banger there.
Yeah, and then like the whole Ministry of Sound era on like the CDs and everything. And then I heard dance music and I was like, whoa. I was like, what is this? And I was like, this is crazy. And then I was like, wow. And then I was like, okay, like, how do I do this? And then so we researched and then went to a music store in Sydney.
Okay.
And then I went to him and I was like, hi, like, I want to learn to make dance music. How do you do it? And then he's like, here, this is called Ableton Live. And then I was like, okay, cool. And then like I remember getting on the laptop, getting on my computer and being like, great, I'm going to make music just like I heard on Ministry Sound.
Here we go.
Sucked. I was like, why? It was so confusing. And I was like, why doesn't anything sound good? Like how do they do everything when I have like, yeah, and that kind of started my journey as a producer.
Right.
And like, I felt like back then in like 2005 and stuff, there was like no YouTube, there was nothing.
Oh, yeah.
So it was like really confusing. And also like VSTs weren't as epic as they are now. So it was definitely like a very confusing progression.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And then, I just made music all the way through high school and then eventually started releasing stuff.
Man, so, with like Milo Drop the Pressure and Ministry of Sound compilations and all that, how were you hearing even those? Like, was that on the radio or was there like a record store somewhere you would drive to?
Yeah, so I think my older sister had got a Ministry of Sound CD. It was like, those Ministry of Sounds, the annual, it was called.
Yeah. I think I don't actually know if they ever put those out in the States, or I'm sure they did, but it might have been later. But yeah, I know those were like really big
massive
in Australia.
Right? Like everyone would listen to them and they would just have these, they would be like, a DJ would mix the set and pick these epic songs. And then that's when I started hearing dance music. And then I was like, wow. And then everything and then I started like really looking into Ministry of Sound and CDs and everything. Then MySpace came along, then SoundCloud came along, and then I started uploading mixtapes and mashups and edits and stuff to those platforms. And that was kind of like the beginning of social media.
Yeah, God, I didn't even think about that. But yeah, the sort of the rise of the internet must have been huge for you out in a semi-isolated place. Like just all of a sudden being able to see what's happening all over the world and connect with people.
Yeah, it was definitely very interesting. It made it possible to be like accessible to everyone. No, you didn't need to be in a certain place to do it as a career anymore, you know, and get exposure and stuff. And that's when I was just using SoundCloud and MySpace to like, and at that time, I would just do mashups and edits because I still didn't understand how to produce like super good enough, you know?
Yeah.
But I could do mashups. And so I was like, oh, what I'll do is I'll just like do these mixtapes and mashups and then that way I'll like build my brand through that and my name. And then when I'm ready to release music, at least I'll have like a bit of a following.
Yeah, it's smart, man. And you're not alone in that kind of thinking. I think a lot of great artists started off that way in dance music. And also that was also kind of the era. Like there was a whole mashup era where like that was the thing to do, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, and then like you DJ on I think they were called CJ 400s.
Oh yeah. I think you're right.
Or
I know.
200s, I think.
Yeah.
I can't remember. They were like the ones where they just had the CDs and they were like.
Right. Like you were actually playing CDs off of them.
Yeah. I remember the CD time because the CD thing was really annoying when you were DJing because it was before they would tell you the name of
right.
what you were playing.
Right.
And you'd have to like organize your CDs in a like bag and then you'd have like all the track lists written down. But then you'd get like the CDs mixed up and then you'd be like trying to, it was like chaotic. And then I remember that the 400s came out with the USB and that was the first time they introduced like the USB technology. And then that's when I started using a USB and everything. And yeah, and then I tried to go to university for a year, but then I ended up just DJing and doing all like the uni parties there and stuff. And I had my own night called Cheeky Tuesdays. And it was $2 beers. And so it was great. And then I got like $400 a night and free drinks.
Oh, that's good.
Like, yeah, it's great. As like an 18-year-old man, that's like, because obviously in Australia you can drink at 18.
Yeah.
It was amazing. So yeah.
Yeah. I would have been overjoyed, man. My college gigs, I feel like I topped out at like 200, 250, maybe 300 if I was lucky, you know, per night. 400's good for college.
Yeah. And that was good because like I consistently could have that and that could get me through the whole week, you know?
Right.
Just doing that.
Yeah, because you don't have a lot of expenses either, right?
Yeah, because in Australia, like you can put your uni on your, I think it's called HEX, and so it's like deducted through tax and stuff like that. So I did similar. Actually, I don't know how close it is to the American system, but anyway,
it depends.
So everything's covered.
Yeah, depends. I think if you're going to a public or private university here in the States, like public is obviously more affordable. Private, you're paying for everything. There's like, it's a whole thing, like crazy student debt and all that. That's like a big debate now.
So that's what I did for a year, and then that's when I started putting like songs out. And then, and that's when things started, like when I was 19, started getting traction and stuff on SoundCloud. And that's when like Hype Machine and everything was hammering along, and like the blog days, you know, like when all the music blogs and everything. And
Australia played a big part in that era, man. Like
crazy.
I think some people are aware of it, but like that, the Hype Machine era, the blog era, like, I don't know. I feel like Australian music then was just so vital to what was going on in dance music as a whole.
Yeah, like I remember like Stereosonic and Future Music Festival and all these like massive electronic festivals. And that was like kind of before the big EDM boom, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I mean, just, acts like, Bag Raiders and Empire of the Sun and like all, I could name 10 more that were just so, I don't know. It was just such an identifiable sound. Like when you were listening to the music, it felt like there was a movement going on,
Yeah, I always remember like growing up, I was too young to go to like Stereosonic and stuff like that. But that was like all the Ministry of Sound guys and everything, and like all that like electro house,
Yeah.
When,
and with kind of like an indie electro vibe. Like it was a really unique angle. I was thinking about this actually because I was listening to some of your new tracks like Sandman and the stuff you've been putting out just this year. And there is a certain vibe to it where I was like, man, it kind of made me nostalgic for that like golden era of there is that kind of just like indie vibe to it where it's sort of hard to place when the song was made, like it could be made today or maybe it was made like 30 years ago. It's hard to tell.
Yeah. It was funny when I was making a lot of these songs originally, I went like way too indie with them, and then I was like tried to bring them back into the electronic world,
right?
But it was all because it's all the live drums.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you, on a production nerd tip, like how much, because it does have the word organic, I think, is a little overused in dance music, but like I think it's appropriate in this case. Like there's a very organic feel to the new music. Like what does your production process look like these days? Is it all live instruments that you're then sort of resampling later?
So it's like a mixture. Like it depends. Like I don't play the drums live, but what I'll do is I'll print them in and I'll use like a drum VST, and then I'll just move the timing and make it all like out of time and a bit rough, and then distort it and everything. But my production process has gotten a lot simpler. Like I remember when I first started, I would buy like every plugin.
Oh yeah.
I went through that and I was like, I need this plugin, I need that plugin. But now like I only use like a few plugins. I use the SSL 9000 from Plugin Alliance. I use that on everything. And that's like my Swiss Army knife for every single track. Like I'll do my high pass, low pass cuts. I'll do my compression, everything. Of course, like additional compression and saturation and editing and everything.
Sure.
I'll add, but like every track I have that because I've tried so many different consoles and stuff. But that 9000 just gives like, I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. Like I've always been like a big Neve fan for preamps and everything. But for mixing and running, like when I'm making a track, I just stick to that 9000 because it just sounds so good.
Well, I think too, not to cut you off, but for any producers who might be listening or watching to this later, that's a really good note that I think maybe that's part of what gives your music that cohesive feel, right? Because if you think about like classic albums we all love, a lot of those albums were made in a single physical space. Every song was run through the same console, the same board, the same circuitry. Yeah. And you're right that like that imbues everything with a certain, tone to it.
Yeah. Cause I try and balance out like whatever I'm doing through the whole track's the same sort of saturation. So like I'll always like smash the preamps if I really need to give everything warmth, but then I've got like the same tone through the whole track, and I just got in the habit of using it, and it just sounds so good. Like, and then the TMT feature on it where it switches to 72 different channels, and they have like different EQs, the slight different EQs and high passes and low passes.
Okay, yeah.
So when you flick them, it'll change your track depending on how much you've like done it, and you can flick through it, and then you can, when you're like right at the end, and you can get some really interesting tones and stuff like that. You can also destroy a track,
right?
Got to save it, because sometimes I got flicked, and then you can't get it back, and then you're like no. So then you kind of have to roll with it because you can hear it. Like there's that, what's that EQ, the the EQ Curve Analyzer by Bertom, I think it is.
Oh, I don't know if I know that one.
Yeah, Bertom.
Okay.
So what it does is, especially if you like want to learn what a plugin's doing, you put the EQ analyzer before the plugin and then after, and then it sends like this little stuttery noise, and then you can touch the curves of the EQs and everything, and then you can see what it's doing.
Oh, that's really nice.
So you can learn visually what whatever plugin you're using, you can see how it's actually cutting. So you get used to knowing kind of, obviously you're using your ears as well, but then you get used to kind of knowing visually and by listening what kind of is going on. And then I, apart from that, I use like Saturn 2, sometimes Decapitator, a bit of UAD stuff and like the Fab Filter stuff.
Yeah.
But I've tried to like limit myself now with like saturation and compression plugins, because it's gotten to a point now where they do all the same. Creatively though, like effects, like that's endless, because I find like there's so much different stuff now that you can use to give your sounds like just a different edge, you know, like everyone can use a sawtooth synth now, you know, but it's like, how can you manipulate it and edit it and distort it and put like a lo-fi signal on it or whatever and some crazy delay. And then you can get this kind of effect where like it's hard to kind of know how you did that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's now that so much is available to us, right? It's like, yeah, you could get a plugin for anything. You could get 10 plugins that do the same thing. Everyone can get them. There's no like gatekeeping for that kind of thing. I kind of like it because I think it forces you to be creative in other ways too, right? Where it's like, it's not just about how can I make this crazy sound no one's ever heard, but it's like, no, we can all make crazy sounds no one's ever heard. So like, what do you have to say about it, you know? Or like, what's your perspective on it? And that I find very exciting.
Yeah, like I think I feel like in the last like 3 years, I just feel like virtual plugins have just leveled up like crazy, you know? It was like probably 2018 was when it got like way better. Especially with like VST synths now, like it's getting so good. I still have issues with like the cutoff filters though. I feel like when you open up like an actual Moog, you know, like you get that warmth and growl, but then when like Serum, it's like getting there, you know?
Yeah.
But like to the listener, like you would never know, like a listener wouldn't be like, oh, that's Serum, or oh, that's
right.
That's a analog synth, you know?
It's true, man. No, I mean, they've gotten pretty close. And I mean, it's interesting, like talking about this versus like when you first started and you know, the guy gave you Ableton and you were making mashups and all that. Was there a period of time when you really like were head down, just acquiring all this knowledge? Did anyone like mentor you or teach you something? Like, were there any light bulb moments, or has this kind of been a constant process?
Just a constant process. I think for me, I felt like in the last like 5 years is when I really got to stick my head down, because like I stopped touring as much and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to focus on music, really like work on every single skill that I can, work on my voice, work on my understanding of how to process a vocal, to like sound design, to everything. So it's like the last 5 years is when I really stuck my head down and was like, okay, what do I want to do? How do I want like my kick drums to sound? Like how can I make my kick drums better? Like it's like everything that I looked at like that was in my production before, I was like, what's like weak about it and what can like I improve on? So it was like, and I was really fortunate to be able to do that because I was like doing it as a full-time career, you know?
Right.
But during school, I would just like learn things as I would go. Then YouTube came around, but that wasn't until like the later on when actual DJ tutorials started happening. So I just kind of learned it all myself.
That's impressive, man.
Never had a mentor. I wish I did. I've got friends that I asked about like different gear and stuff, and one buddy who kind of really helped guide me into hardware processing, like different preamps and compressors and stuff like that. Mainly just for vocals though. And any synths and stuff, I try and always run them through a preamp, or if I'm like recording a guitar or acoustic guitar or whatever, I always try and use outboard gear. But if I'm doing something in the box, I kind of just keep it in the box because I just couldn't be bothered to run it out and back in.
No, I'm the same way, man.
Yeah.
For me, at least, it's like whatever I can do to simplify the process as much as possible, even if that means sacrificing something that, you know, maybe would be cool to do. But it's like, for me, it's got to be the simplest way from A to B.
There's one really cool piece of outboard gear that I got, and it's called a radar.
Okay.
It's like it's an EXTC radar.
Right.
And what it does is have you heard of it?
No, I don't think I have.
Okay. It's the one thing that like gives you limitless creativity. Is it allows you to send audio out of your DAW and into guitar pedal.
Oh yeah, nice.
So you can like get this, you can run your vocals through like these crazy chain of guitar pedals, and you can get like these weird sounds and stuff like that. That's like one thing that I do go to the effort to sometimes do, but mainly it's all in the box.
No, I like that, man. I don't have so many like analog synths anymore, but I used to run some of those through pedals, and you could get the wildest stuff doing that.
Yeah,
so
it's crazy.
Fun. Well, it's fun. Yeah, it's the best, man. And I don't know, all of this is fun. Like, this is another thing that I think is cool just in this conversation. Like, it's very obvious you're still having fun with all of this. And I think that, I don't know, I'm sure you know people like this as much as I do. Like, this long into a career, especially after going through like an intense period of rediscovery and creative like reinvention and all that, I think some people it's easy to get jaded or to kind of lose like what's fun about all this. It's nice to like just see you still stoked to talk about.
I love it, man. I love it. I like when I'm not doing shows, I'm always I try and treat it as a job. So like I usually get up at 6 a.m, try and get to the studio at 7. Then I do like an hour and a half of vocal exercises. Then once a week I see my vocal coach, and then I try and like learn some things in the morning, or like try and get better at something that I'm not that good at, you know, like it can be anything. And then I like I'll do like, okay, for the next 3 weeks, I'm just gonna learn to make kick drums in the morning, and then I'm gonna go back to working. And and then because I find like with especially kick drums, like I think kick drums are like 80% of the song, you know.
Yeah, they can be, absolutely.
And so that's kind of how I do my process now, is like I just keep trying to learn, and I always love buying gear and everything and whatever I can kind of do to get better as a producer and learn different skills and stuff like that. And all for it.
Well, and I want to talk more about this like 5-year period where you kind of took a little hiatus, or, you know, took a step back to work on all of this. But before we really dig into it, I feel like we should at least talk about briefly what was happening before that. Because to me, you know, when you did kind of take a step back and all that, I think a lot of people were surprised, because at the time, like, shit was going pretty good and your profile was high, and you were, you know, associated with like a movement that was doing really well as far as like the tropical house thing goes.
Yeah.
And, you know, so for that, like, just briefly, because I'm sure you've talked about this period of time ad infinitum, but like, you know, you put out in 2015, the song Rivers.
Yeah.
And that, am I right that was kind of the one that like blew everything open?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. You know, there was a lot of momentum before that with like the mixtape series that I did, and then like what really helped me launch my career was just doing all the SoundCloud remixes. Like every 2 weeks, you would just do a remix, and then you could use the traction of the artist that song was already like a big song or whatever, and then you'd remix it. So people are always going to be like, "Oh wow," you know?
Yeah. And again, blogs and Hype Machine and all that.
Yeah,
it was
like
this
that was
crazy cycle.
Like, you can't. It's like so different now. You can't like do that anymore. So I was very fortunate to be able to do that at that time.
What were some of the SoundCloud remixes you did that really went crazy?
There's like there's this acoustic artist called Benjamin Francis Leftwich.
Okay.
There's another one by Gabriel Rios or Rio. I don't know how to say it. It's R-I-O-S.
Yeah. I've seen that name. Yeah.
Yeah. And that one, and I did like an Monsters of Men one. There was like a bunch of different ones, and I didn't really know what I was doing at the time. I kind of was just like winging it, and then
were you looking at it as a serious thing at that point? Like, were you already focused on like, I want this to be my career?
I was just happy that I was just making music, to be honest, you know, like I was not having to work like a normal job, and I could just do that. And so I was like pretty stoked. Like I was just happy doing that. You know, I didn't envision to be like, to go like crazy or anything. I just was like, I'm stoked. I'm making tunes and drinking tequila, and it's good, you know?
Yeah. And you're young, and yeah, it's just all fun, right?
Yeah. So it was good, man. And then touring started getting like full on. Like I was doing like so many shows, like crazy amount of shows every week, like just bam, 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 bam. And then it was 2017, the end of 2017. And I was like, okay, like I can keep going with this. But then I was like, what? But I was always like, what's next? And I was like, what am I going to do next? And so then I was like, all right. I was like, you know what? I want to learn to sing. And I want to learn to sing on like all my songs so I can like eventually build a live show and then perform like all the songs I've written. And so at the end of 2017, my manager connected me with his vocal coach in LA. And then I was just like, what up, man? Like, I can't sing. I'd love to learn. Can you teach me? And he's like, sure. He's like, but you know, I can't guarantee you when you will get there.
Yeah.
But I can guarantee you if you stay at it consistently, you will get there eventually. So I was like, cool. And I was like, yeah, sweet. And then he's like, cool, come back tomorrow for your first lesson. And so I was like, all right. Came back the next day, walked in, and there was him there with these 3 girls that were singing. They're like all pitch perfect.
Yeah.
Like this kind of girl group thing that he was like training. They were quite young, but like they're like probably 16 or 18 or something. And he has like this little stage and like these lights and mic and everything. And then the mic's so loud, so when you sing, it just is like makes it really awkward, right? Especially if you're not used to that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then he was like, Tom, did you bring a song to sing? And I was like, dude, I've never sung in my life. What are you talking about? And he's like, but you know songs, right? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, do you know the lyrics of songs? And I was like, I guess. And he's like, so then go sing. And then I was like, oh my God, this guy's making me get up and perform right now. And I was like, oh God. And then it was like, but it wasn't like they got up like and were like this close. Like and then the 3 girls were here, and then I just had to sing. And then he's like, now keep eye contact with her and sing into her eyes.
Wow.
And then I was like shaking, and I was so embarrassed because I'd never been put on the spot like that before, especially like trying to sing when you can't sing. And I would like try, and then he'd be like, no. He's like, where's the energy? I'm not convinced. And then I'm like, dude, I've never done this before. And then he's like, yeah, but like feel into the music. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And then eventually he was like, all right, sweet, you girls can go now. And then we started the lesson. And then he's like, what'd you think? And then I was like, what do you mean, man? That was like the worst experience ever. And then he's like, yeah, but like now you're going to learn to sing. And like after this lesson, you're going to be better than when you first walked in. And the next time someone asks you to sing, you're never going to be in a more awkward situation than what you were in before.
Right.
And and then he was throughout, like, because I would see him every week all the way like 2018, 2019, all the way up to 2020. And he would constantly make me perform and really get comfortable with connecting with people and working my voice and everything. But yeah, so that's kind of what I did. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to have a break. Like, I don't really, like, I'm not phased. Like, I believe in what I do and I love it. And that's all that matters.
Was it scary at all? Or were, I'm sure like in general, like that's not a thing management loves to hear as far as like, I'm going to go disappear for 5 years. Like,
yeah, well, I didn't really think it was going to be 5 years. Like,
yeah, I'm sure
it was like, yeah, that, cause I was like, yeah, I'm going to learn to sing. And then they were like, okay. And then, but they were super supportive of it. And they're like, sure. I guess they didn't think that it would take so long.
Right.
And then I had music ready to go at the start of 2020, and I was going to release music in the summer. So I was ready to go, get back into it and start releasing. And then COVID hit.
Yeah.
And then I was like, damn. And I was like, okay, cool. And then for me at that time, I didn't feel like it was ready or I was ready. And so when the COVID thing happened, I was like, sweet, like I've got all this time now. So I'll just like start working on music and see if I can beat what I've already done. And so I've made like hundreds of songs, obviously, but I'm just wrapping up my album at the moment of like, it's literally in like last month, I've written more songs to it than like in like the 5 years. It's pretty funny. I think because there's like, I've got to finish it next week. So I'm like really trying to like dial it in now and stuff. But yeah, it's like a combination of like my past sound with like some new sound. And then just like, there's some instrumentals in there. And then there's like a lot of singing stuff and I'm singing on everything. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at with it. But yeah, no, it wasn't scary. Like I just was like, as long as I was like doing this as a career, like I was happy, man. Like that's all I really care about. Like I enjoy the musical process so much. That's all I really care about. And when I was touring so I didn't have time to make any music, but everyone wanted me to make music.
Right.
But I didn't have the time to do that. Which I found hard. So I wanted to get back to that and I wanted to get better at producing and everything.
Yeah. Was part of it possibly also like knowing that you had more to say or, more things you wanted to explore, different sides of yourself you wanted to show people, but that you just didn't have like the time from touring, but also like the what's the word? Like the opening to do it. Because I think at a certain point, like back, before 2017, when Tropical House as a movement is going crazy and you're associated strongly with that movement, I have to imagine at a certain point, it starts to feel like you're painted in a corner to a certain extent.
Yeah, that was kind of my thing because I was like, I don't want to be like, known for just like one thing, and I kind of got pigeoned into that. But then I was like, well, like I want to do like a lot more than this, and I want to always grow as an artist, and like just as like people's musical taste changes over time, so does like artistic chase. And for me, I just never wanted to be like locked into one thing, and that's what scared me the most. Because I was like, imagine making the same thing for the rest of your life. I was like, I want to keep evolving and doing different things and always trying different things. And that was my goal, because that's what makes me the most happy, you know. Like, this is, at the end of the day, it's all about just like finding whatever way I can be most happy in what I love, and that's all that really matters to me. And so this process really allowed me to do that and to be happy in what I create. And I got so much new music that I've been holding out on. So I'm excited to kind of get back into it now.
On that note, you know, do you look at what you're doing now and look at the musical landscape going on around you? Do you feel an allegiance? Like, are you part of any one group or style or anything at this point? Like, because I think, you know, after the tropical house thing, it's probably appealing to not fit in as much. But I am curious, like, where you see the project going. You know, you were talking about like live shows and all this.
Yeah. I have no idea, to be honest. I guess I'll see where it lands at the end of the year when like everything's out. But right now I kind of just was doing what felt good. I don't know what the final number of songs that are going to be on the album are, but there's a lot. But yeah, because I love DJing. I always DJ, but I definitely wanted to challenge myself and try and do a live show. But like with the live show, try and like sing everything and
right.
do it like that, which was a big challenge for me. And I've got like the idea of everything now. And once the music's out, I kind of just have to figure it all out, put it together into a show.
That's good, man. I mean, you know, in this whole conversation, like, it's pretty impressive to me that you are able to kind of have this calm attitude about all of this the whole way through. And I mean, I'm sure there's been plenty of points of anxiety and all that, but being able to sort of stay the course and like be sure of your direction and all that, I think that's, I don't know, I want to emphasize it because I think it's kind of rare and it's hard to do in an industry like this where there's a lot of pressures either that we put on ourselves or that come externally. Like, do you ascribe that quality about yourself to anything? Have you just always been that way? Are there practices you do to keep yourself in a good headspace that way?
I'm not really sure. I think like I've always, whatever I try and like envision and believe in, I really just try and stick to it, and stick to that goal and really stick to intuition, you know, and whatever feels right, and not to get caught up in the pressure of the music industry and different styles and trends that are going on and stuff, and just kind of doing your own thing, but just making sure that you're always happy through the whole process, you know. And when that happiness stops, it's when you need to like stop for a second and like figure out what's going on. Because I think that's what people forget, and you know, and that's the most important thing about life is just to enjoy and to be happy.
It's nice to hear that perspective on it because I think it's so easy on any level of this business, either when you're starting off or even when you're deep in it, to get so goal oriented of just like, you know, okay, this thing's done. What's the next thing? And trying to sort of just get to the next rung on the ladder rather than doing what you're talking about, which is just trying to figure out what's the next thing that I'm going to have fun doing, or what's the next thing that's going to make me happy. Which oftentimes we forget this, but oftentimes if you do that thing that's going to make you happy, you end up on that next rung anyway, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a show, man.
I don't know. I wonder if like some of that comes from like your upbringing, you know, talking about like, the serious work that you were taught to do at a young age, as far as like, no, like you're going to do all of this on the farm. You yourself will know how to do it. It's like, you know, to me, I think of farming as like such a, you know, you have to know how to do everything basically. Like it's really all on them.
Yeah. And it's a lot of appreciation for nature and shows like the beauty of it, but also like the destruction. Like,
right.
Some crazy times, man. Like there was drought, right? And then it wouldn't rain and you just couldn't do anything about it, you know? And that's like your source of income. And then it would rain and you'd be like so happy, you know, and everyone would be like happy.
Right.
And then it'd be so dry that there'd be like crazy bushfires, which was nuts. So
terrifying.
Oh man. Before COVID, right? at the start of 2020 on our property. We're about probably 2.5 miles from the mountains, right? And in Australia, it's all gum trees and eucalyptus trees.
Right.
And if eucalyptus trees like go up like straight up. Yeah, it's crazy. And so the problem with the mountains is like there's all like for like 40 years, there's just a bunch of stuff on the ground, you know, all the dead logs, leaves, everything. So when a fire happens, it will just go woof straight through. So on like, I think it was the 28th of January, the 28th of December, my dad sends me a video and then like the whole mountain is just like on fire. I can send you photos after this. I was over in Perth with my partner seeing her family for New Year's. And this was, start 2020. And then we were meant to go there the next day.
Wow.
And so we get there and then it's just like really smoky. And then the mountain was kind of like on fire and stuff, but it wasn't as hot as 2 days prior. So the embers had kind of settled and there was like not much flame. But then the rural fire service and the news and everything, and everyone was saying 2 days from now, it's going to be crazy. Like it's going to be nuts and everything's going to burn. And so like, it's so hard because with that, the fire brigades and stuff were only looking after the towns. So they're like, look, if you want to be safe, go to town, like leave your farm, everything. But then like, obviously, like my family's like, well, this is like our life, you know, like
the animals,
like all our cattle and everything. Yeah. I remember, so on that day, the sky went red, like full red, like apocalypse red.
Yeah.
It was crazy. And then they said that the fire was going to burn and go straight through our property. But my dad the whole time was like, no, back in 1968, same fire came through here and it went across the mountain and burned over the hill. He's like, it's going to do the same thing. And then everyone's like, no, like get out of there. And then he's like, no, it's fine. And then so we put all the cattle in the yards, and then we have this sprinkler system around it and just sprayed water all over them and stuff. Cause it was like 48 degrees or something. It was crazy hot and like crazy winds and just smoke everywhere. And then the sky went red at like 2:00 in the afternoon, and then like apocalyptic red, like dark blood red. It was crazy. Never seen anything like it. And then the winds turned, and then it kind of pushed all the fire over the mountain, just like my dad said, and then it burnt over the back.
Right.
And
incredible.
And then it was fine. But then what happened is then the easterly came in from the ocean, but then the fire was already so far over the mountain it couldn't go back over because it had already burnt that way.
Right.
Then the easterly came in and pushed all the smoke back. And then it was just black. And then we couldn't see anything for 2 days, man. It was crazy. Like we had these little sanding masks, like those, sand.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, I was coughing. Like it was horrible. You couldn't see 5 meters. Like it was crazy. Like,
it's true apocalypse
it was nuts.
Shit, man.
It was horrible. And then that's when COVID was announced. And I was like, man, this is way more hectic than COVID for me, like from my experience.
Right.
Yeah. So then, that was a bit of a...
But yeah, I mean, to bring it like all the way back around, like even with all of that, the work still had to get done, right? Like the animals still had to be taken care of, all of that. And I don't know, I hear some of that same ethos in the way you talk about making music and pushing forward with your career, man, where it's just like, like sometimes you gotta do the unpleasant thing or the not obvious choice in order to just keep pushing everything forward.
Yeah, I think a real important thing is discipline in like what you do. Like if you if whatever you want to do in your life, like if you love it or whatever you've got to do, just like teaching yourself discipline, and like, especially when like in music, if you have the freedom to be a producer and stuff and an artist, like really teaching yourself discipline with like consistency and getting in a habit of like working through the week consistently, like in a certain set of hours, you know, instead of being like, I'm just going to make music then, I'm just going to make music then.
Yeah.
Like getting up early and then like going to the studio or making music, wherever you make music, working the whole day, try and have a lunch break, then like 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, knock off and then go home, or like close your computer, or if you got like a bedroom, studio, whatever, just like set it aside and really try and divide up hours. But in that, like really structure what you do, like instead of like just being like, I'm just going to make music for like the whole day, right. Be like, okay, like let's every morning for an hour, like I'll learn something or I'll do some tutorials. Like I do this thing in the morning for like 20 minutes every morning. Like it's like, I don't really know what I call it, but it's just like, I just do like a creative kind of thing where like I'll just throw whatever I can into Ableton, and then I'll just chuck random things and just not with no intention, but just like experiment weird things and do different things where you just kind of are like experimenting and learning different styles and techniques that you can like just like side chaining like weird things and like putting an echo and just like learning weird things. And I've like a lot of songs that I've made that will be coming out eventually were created in that time, but it allowed me to like think outside of what I was always creating normally, you know, like, which I think is important because like as producers, we only know what we know, you know, so we're only going to always do that. But the only way we're going to ever expand is if we like start to experiment out of our comfort zones. And so that's what I was trying to do in the morning and stuff. Then like kick drums, always try and make kick drums, like get better at doing that, you know, like, and that's kind of what I do and separate different parts of the day. So it's just like, so when you do actually have your time scheduled to make music, like you're making music and you're not like questioning things or trying to learn things or figure out things, you know, or if I do struggle with something, or if there's something that I'm having difficulties with, I'll write it down and be like, okay, like I'm having issues with these type of leads, or like my melodic techniques for my chord structures or something is like being too consistent with all the other songs. So like, let's change it up. Let's like find some different songs. Let's like learn from something. Let's find a tutorial, like anything to kind of keep pushing you. And then you're always going to have like a great creative flow, and you're always going to remain inspired because you're always like learning something new to implement to your own skill base.
Yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice, man. And especially like you said, if you run into a problem or you're hitting a wall with some particular issue, it's like, you kind of have to, writing it down is a great idea, because I think something like that where you can kind of just bounce off of the problem, keep moving forward. But then as you do, other things you do later down the line, you can connect them back to that problem you had.
Yeah.
And, you know, sometimes it ends up sort of solving itself as long as you keep thinking about it, keep processing it like in the back of your head, you know?
Yeah. The other thing is like the most simplest things you can do is color coding, and like only having that color for that group every session. So like, for example, like my synths and keys are always purple, my drums are blue.
Yeah, I do the same thing, man. Yeah.
And just getting in that habit of like having a consistency in color, it like helped me so much. And then organizing my samples, you know, and then limiting how many samples I had, you know, and like, and getting kind of, and like limiting how many plugins you use, you know, like keeping a plugin and just getting really good at one plugin you love, you know, like, and using it on everything if like you want to have like a consistency of sound and stuff.
Yeah. Cause I think, I've talked about this on the show before, but so often it's so tempting to just be like, oh, I'm running into a problem. What VST can I buy that will fix this problem, which is never the solution. You know, it's like, that's just, it's such a distraction. It's almost like, it's like masturbation or something. Like it doesn't solve the problem. You're just going to come back to it later.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I think like pinpointing what is stopping your creative flow, you know, because there's always like a reason. Like it could be anything, you know, it could be just something that you're not doing, or like you get in the habit of doing. Like sometimes I get in the habit of doing the same bass line patterns. So I'll try and like listen outside of that and try and do like different ones and stuff, you know, like could be anything, man. I think like simplifying my artistic process has been like the best thing, and just like not using as much stuff and just like getting really good at just one plugin and knowing it really well and knowing the sound of it, like knowing what it's going to sound like, and then really learning that instead of having like, because I remember when I used to start music, or when like I really started getting into plugins, I bought so many different plugins and I didn't know, like I knew them, but I didn't really know like the depth of them.
Yeah, of course.
And like, but when you like just use a few plugins for a really long time, you really get good at like hearing and knowing what they sound like and how to use them. And yeah, so that's kind of what I've done. And then just trying to be as creative as possible and using anything. So like not limited, like I'll use VSTs, I'll use hardware synths, I'll use guitars amped into weird things, and like I'll use synths amped into like an amp or whatever, like whatever can get me some sort of creativity.
Yeah. Well, did learning to sing, because I mean, you're talking about, you know, an hour a day warm up kind of thing. This is a serious thing. Did learning to sing change the way you write music or you make your own music?
Man. Like completely. It changed my life. It was one of the most challenging things I've ever done. And still is challenging because I'm still like learning.
Yeah, I mean, so I have to assume, but just so we make sure everyone listening at home knows too. I mean, we're talking about like hours of work every day, more or less, for like years, right?
Yeah, every day. So it was funny because before I had a studio, when we'd live at home, my partner, Georgia, she's amazing and never said a word. But over like 4 years, I was like, she's probably getting sick of hearing the same vowels. Because it's my vocal coach would give me different exercises and he'd be like, do that. It'd be like the same thing as doing a pull-up. Like anyone can learn to sing. Everyone, like if you can talk, you can sing.
Right.
But it's just how we train the vocal muscles over time. And it's such a slow process. Like it's so minuscule and you can only do so much a day. You know, like you can't just do like 5 hours and then like an hour the next day. It's just like consistently doing an hour every day and you slowly get better, really slow. Like, of course you improve, but like it's a process, man. It was like one of the most challenging things I've ever done. And there was a lot of times where I wanted to give up, but then I already went so far. So I was like, I can't, like I've already done 2 years. Like, and then I'm like, I would have wasted 2 years of my life if I gave up. So I did that, but then I just got in the habit of doing it. And now I just need to do them every day because it's just become a part of my life. And so, so all the songs that are coming out for the future are all sung by me. And it completely changed the way I produce music, because when I would be writing now, I'd be thinking about what story I could put to it, you know, but then having like, I loved the ability to have full control, you know, like you weren't working with different singers. So like you can really have a storyline go over time. Like you can write things like that you have a completely polar opposite meaning to, you know, like people might read this and be like, oh, it's about love, or oh, it's about this, but it could be about like some internal thing, you know, like it's like, that's what I really found fascinating about the lyrical side and singing and everything is like, there's this, it allows you to have this whole other aspect in your artistic creativity, you know, and it also allows you to simplify things a lot as well, because like adding vocals from the start, you're not like trying to add a billion different things and sounds and stuff to make it engaging. You can just have a kick drum and a bass line and that's it, you know, and just some vocals over the top, and it can be a really great song.
It's an impressive thing, because I think, again, it's just unique to you. There's a lot of people in your position who would not make the choices you made when you took a step back to learn all this new stuff and, you know, give up the touring and like just the money of it and all that. Like there's, you know, it's a unique thing. And I just want to emphasize that, because I find that very interesting, man. I think it says a lot about you.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's been an interesting couple of years, man, but I wouldn't change it for anything. Like I've had the best time. I get to do what I love. So like, that's all I care about, you know?
Is it weird to step back into the rat race of it, the whirlwind of it?
A little bit, yeah. Like, I think, like, because I stopped doing social media and everything, because I was like, look, if I'm going to work on myself and my career, like, I have nothing to, no music to share right now. So what's the point of me, like, even, like, acknowledging my social media? So that's how I've thought about it. And then for me, I just felt like it was a distraction, you know? Like
it is a distraction. You're right.
Yeah. And like, I was just like, you just find yourself on it. And then like, you'd be like figuring out what to post and when to post and stuff like that. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be releasing music for a while. So I'll just like disappear for a bit. And then like when I need to, like I'll jump back on it. Yeah, it's interesting. Like I always enjoy social media. Like I like sharing what I do, but I'm definitely, just getting back into it now and stuff. Especially now, it's like a lot different than like
landscape,
4 years ago, man. Like, but yeah, it's good. I'm happy to be back on, man. I'm happy to be back in the world now. You know,
have you played any shows back yet?
Hey,
have you played shows back yet?
Yeah, I've been playing shows. Definitely been playing shows. So I've been definitely back at it, and starting to ramp things up again, man. It's just yeah, I think when the album comes out and based around that, that's all I'm really, right now I'm just trying to spend as much time just finalizing it.
I don't really have a segue for this. The last thing I wanted to talk about briefly was just the idea of travel in general, because just reading up about you, like I know you've spent time in a bunch of different places, aside from touring and all that. And it just sounded like that was something that was important to you or you found value in. What was some of the early travels you made, maybe even as a kid, that like really had a big impact on you?
Yeah, so growing up, we never traveled because we couldn't get away from the farm. So it wasn't until I left school and I went to India, and that was the first place I ever traveled outside of Australia. And that was crazy because and it was my sister that encouraged me to go there, because everyone was going to like Greece and everything for like a gap year. And she's like, nah, go to India and like go find yourself. And so I was like, all right, cool. Like didn't even understand anything about anything.
Yeah, you're like, sure, it's all the same.
Like,
why not?
Find myself. I don't know what she means, but like I'll just go to India. And I loved it, man. Like it was so cool. Like I had the best time. Like I explored through Rajasthan and seeing how India works. It's like this crazy place and it just works. So, you know, like there's just a billion cars and a billion things and everything's just going on. And it's like this beautiful chaos.
Yeah.
And like, there'd be like the poorest people and they'd be so happy. Like there was this guy that I would used to help who rode camels and would do these camels safari tours and stuff out in Jaisalmer. And he would always invite me back to his house. And it was literally like this tiny little thing. And he didn't even have a roof. He just had like this half blue tarp over the top. And we'd sit there and drink chai. And then he'd welcome me in and they'd be like so loving and caring and just so happy. And, you know, and seeing like extreme poverty, but seeing like people just so happy about life, you know, and from an early age, getting that experience definitely changed my perspective of the world and appreciation for things. And definitely gave me a lot of respect and I don't know, just respected people, different parts of the world and different areas and stuff like that. Because before that, I just lived in Australia my whole life, you know?
Right. And it's interesting, like that was what you took out of going to India, or at least part of it. Because I think that sort of ties back into the conversation we've been having this whole time of like, yeah, it's the fulfillment really has to come from yourself. And there's always something to be appreciative for.
Yeah. Like, I think like the most important thing is to like chase your happiness and really follow that. Because I think like no matter what you do, if you just stick to that, then you'll always be good, you know? So that's what I've always tried to do. And definitely like been in parts where I've been like questioning things and everything like that, like everything, you know, and struggled with some stuff and like just human things, you know, but always tried to make sure I would follow that happiness and follow like what felt right and stuff, especially in my career and my artistic vision as well.
I mean, there's a million more things we could talk about, but I feel like we did pretty good here. Is there anything else we haven't talked about yet? Anything else that's on your mind or you want to get out there before I wrap it up?
No, just I'm just wrapping up finally gonna put out an album.
Is there any details about that out yet? Anything you want to share?
Well, I gotta finish it first.
Right.
I'm meant to hand it in tomorrow. But like, it's like, there's like 5-6 songs on there that are like at 90%. And it's like that last 10%.
It's the hardest part.
Yeah. There's like some beautiful like songs and then like really great lyrical structures and melodic structures. And then like, it'd be like missing a hook. And then be like, so then I've just been trying to figure out that. And yeah, but I'm really excited, man.
That's good, man. That's like the best place to be. And that's the most fun place. I think that's the most fun place is like you're excited for it and all the potential is there, but it hasn't happened yet. So like it could be anything, you know? Like,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I just think that I've really enjoyed the process of making it and just how much I've learned, you know? That's what I'm so grateful for is like the process of doing an album, what it's like taught me and how like I've enabled myself to be a better producer, a better writer, a better singer, like all of it. Like, some fun, man.
Yeah, it's just the start, right? Like that's the fun part of it is like you're doing an album, you work so hard, but like that's just the point A on the way to, you know, B, C, D, E. Yeah.
The reason I'm doing an album is so people get the new thing as opposed to the old thing, you know?
Yeah.
Like, so I think a body of work will help explain that to people. So that was kind of my goal to be like, okay, been gone for a while, but here's some new tunes for you. You can enjoy it.
Yeah, I think that's smart, man. I think I think that'll work great. Well, this has been awesome, man. I always ask the same question at the end of each one of these interviews. It's a quick thing, like first thing that pops into your head kind of question. Just looking for a memory from your life, a moment from your life, could be from any time, when in that moment, in that memory, music really hit you hard in that moment, really had like a deep impact on you for whatever reason, happy, sad, anything. And that's meant to be a super broad question. There's no wrong answer. It's kind of just the first thing you think of.
Oh man, there's so many, but I think one that was really special was I think it was 2014 and it was down at BPM Festival and I was there with some friends. And that was just when I started to do it as a career and was just kind of cruising around and just doing my thing, not really like being full professional yet, just kind of in like, wow, like I'm getting some money for some shows and stuff. This is pretty cool. Like that, kind of like that. My buddy was like, dude, you got to come to this Innovisions party and see Dixon play in the jungle. And so I was like, okay, cool. I'm there. And then it was epic, but I always remember that the last song he played was Jose Gonzalez's cover of Walk on the Moon.
Okay. Yep.
And I was like, and then the sun was rising and then the guitar came in and I was like, wow, this is beautiful. And it just created an emotion from that. And I was like, wow, I was like, the way I felt is what I want people to feel when they come see me perform.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. And I think that's also like, even for Dixon, who's obviously an amazing talent, but like, playing Jose Gonzalez in a Dixon set is not even something you would necessarily expect. And that's like kind of that thing again of like pushing back against expectations. So I see a few different links there, man. I can almost like imagine myself there hearing you talk about it. Sounds great.
Yeah, man, it was wild, man. It was definitely an experience, man. That moment actually was one of the pinnacle points in my life that taught me to chase that feeling of like, and sticking to that. And that's one of the reasons from 2017, I was still thinking about 2014 and how I can keep following that and stuff.
Yeah. That's a great way to think about it, is like, because we've all had those moments in our lives where for whatever reason, it's just like, oh, this is a moment I'm going to always remember for the rest of my life. Like this feeling, I'm never going to forget it. But then keeping that as kind of like a benchmark for yourself and anything you're trying to make or accomplish is like, well, am I close to that feeling, or am I moving in the direction of that feeling? Because that's always going to take you in the right direction, man. That's a great way to think about it.
Yeah. So that's kind of, I always try and think with feelings as opposed to my head.
Yeah. I think
that's what we've all got to do,
Yeah, I think you're right, man. That's the paradox of this podcast is I spend all day doing the opposite, talking about the feelings. Man.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, this has been great, man. Thank you so much for doing it. I hope you had a good time.
Yeah, man. I had a blast, man.
Hell yeah. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.
Awesome, man. Take care.
Yeah, peace,
Pleasure
man.
to meet you.
Yeah, you too.
Take care.
Bye, man.